Continuamos con la siguiente exposición que va a ser Marc van Gyseghem. Since December 2001, he has been working at the Research Center on Information, Law and Society at the University of Namur, where he is now Director of Research after having been the head of the research unit, Liberties in the Information Society, from 2008 to 2016. Since November 2014, he has also been financial and executive manager of the Advanced Master in ICT and CRIS vocational trainings in Jury, TIC, InfoSafe, DataSafe, DocSafe, and he is lecturer in the two last ones. He's an expert for the ITU, that's the International Telecommunications Union, I think. This is the agency of the UN for Information and Communication Technologies and the Council of Europe in data protection, mainly in pseudonymization and personal data. He is also a member of the Bar of Brussels and partner at Rollins Giles law firm. He is specialized in medical law, insurance, privacy, medical data protection, and health services. And he is going to speak about the Internet of the Things, big data, and the general data protection regulations in Europe.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is it working? Yes. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk about the GDPR, which is raising fears in the world, and maybe mainly in Europe. But fortunately, GDPR is only an evolution, not a revolution. And we maintain the principles we had in the Directive 95/46, and we put some more process in charge of the data controller. What is new in this GDPR, it's a fine. If we lack in the compliancy to the GDPR, we'll have to pay much more than before. Then it can be 20 million €, can be quite incentive to be compliant with the GDPR. What I will speak about, it's mainly about the reuse of data, which is can be called further utilization, further processing, or we can have also new processing for the data. I allow me to give few definitions. It's not by fun, but it's to be sure that we speak the same language and we speak about the same things during these 20 minutes. Then the Internet of Things, which I will call the primary collection of data, can be defined in ITU definition or recommendation. It's a global infrastructure for the information society, enabling advanced services by interconnecting things based on existing and evolving interoperable information communication technology, which is the main words in this definition is the interconnection. Then we'll try and we'll take information and we try to make connection between them to have a kind of profile or a kind of information used for research, statistics, or other purpose. The second definition will be the definition of personal data. And that's, you will see the wide range of data it's included in personal data because it's any information relating to an identified or identifiable natural person, which is data subject. I will speak about the relating data, which means that it's not, we don't speak about ownership in the regulation. Then my data, it's related to me, it's not my data. And that's, I think the choice of the words are very important for the future of the data and the reprocessing of the data, because we'll play on that, or at least the companies will play on the notion of ownership. We don't speak about ownership, we speak about relation between data subjects and information. That means also that when we speak about pseudonymization, which is quoted data, we don't speak about anonymous data. Pseudonymous data is personal data because we can do the relation between the data and the data subjects. When you process anonymous data, it won't be personal data. And when we speak about big data, and we'll see later on, we'll have an amount of anonymous data at the beginning. It will become personal data by an aggregation of data. Profiling, it's also a very useful word or useful concept because we can use big data to profile people. We can use big data for the calculation of insurance costs. And that's very important because it's based on profiling, and the GDPR tackles the notion of profiling. We see that big data is coming from all over devices we use, and even, I will say, daily use, fridge, alarm, electricity consumption. Now in Belgium we will implement a spatial counter in the house, which is, we speak about smart counters that can analyze your consumption and so on. Then it's a connected device, but also in e-health you have medical devices, and you have also funny devices, which is connected to watches, for example. He measure your number of steps per day and so on. It's all those data can be merged in a cloud and becoming very useful for companies. The CNIL, which is the Data Protection Authority in France, give three characteristics of the big data, which is the volume, speed, and range and variety, and we can add added value, as the first keynote speaker told us, and maybe veracity, but that can be discussed because there is a question of veracity of the data when we speak about big data. As I said, you have many data which can be anonymous at the beginning, but when you put them together, we do aggregation. It can become data, personal data, and then can be linked or put in relation with the data subjects. Then we come from anonymous data and we go to personal data, and then we fall in the GDPR legislation. And that's the whole game for the big companies using big data. The fact that some producer of devices or some service providers collect data from many devices. As we see, it can be fridge, it can be connected clock, it can be also a medical device, coming from hospital, coming from other producers, or coming directly from the data subjects. And after that, it can be sent or can be used by the insurance, by the data brokers. We have a new business in the United States. It's coming in Europe. It's the data brokers and using the data to aggregate them and to sell them to other users. And we have also a number of unknown people using the data. And we can see that the insurance and the data brokers collect information from many producers. And that's, for me, that means the big data, because all information are collected by few actors. The data, it's a huge volume of data. It's collected only for few use or for few user in the economic or digital economy. What we have to see is with who in regards of the GDPR, with the data controller, with the data subject. About the data subject, it's quite easy. It's you, it's me, because you are data subjects. We are all data subjects. And we can say that the first collector of data, the first processor of the data will be the data controller. Then he will use, will process the data for a purpose he has determined before. And he will use the means he has determined before also. That the two characteristics of the data controller can be seen in the producer or service provider. We tried before to say that in reality, the producer and service provider will be only processor, and he will act under the instruction of the data subjects, because in the data subject it will tell him and will use the platform without with some instruction. Now with the GDPR, this idea it's over. Then now with the GDPR, we say that the producer and service provider will be the data controller. What we see is that the first data controller will send data with, to other people, to other companies, to other producer or service provider. And we tackle a problem there because we don't see if we can call them further data controller or secondary data controller. It's quite different because the further processing is tackled by the GDPR. As some rules, we have to follow some rules to be qualified of further processor of further processing controller. A secondary data controller means that you start a new processing. Then you have to start from the beginning, from information, from liceity, from so many things. Then it's very important to be able to qualify this second group. What I will speak mainly, it's about further data controller because it can be very interesting for us. Then you have the data subject who receive information. And the information can be done or can be given by law or by privacy policy. Then you inform the data subject about what you will do about on the data, for which purpose, and what kind of means you will use. And you can also you have to inform also about the use of data processor. When he has information, he has the choice between giving the consent, or if it's by law, if there is no consent, it's the law obliged the processing. Or you have also the legitimate interest we find in the GDPR. And he sends or he gives his data. We have also a question of the value of the data, the cost of the data. And we see that it's very difficult to value a personal data because when we speak about big data, there is no value at the beginning. The data, it's null because normally it's anonymous at the beginning. And the value is coming because you will aggregate the data and will get an amount of money at the end because you will have a big, adequate, a very useful information at the end you send to the data brokers. You see that with Google, with Facebook, the business is, by the aggregation of information, sold to an actor of the economy, the digital economy. What we try to put in a project in Belgium, it's to create a trademark, a privacy trademark. And we will use data which is in trademark, and we value this data with the production of information at the end. And it will be a return of benefits for the data subjects. We made a test a few months ago, and I went on Facebook with my account, and I clicked several times on advertising, and I saw that after 5 clicks, my data were valued to 100 euros, and I don't gain anything. That we see that's a big data. It's really important economic issue. Then when you give data, after that he has the right to access, opposition, erasure, portability, etc. And there is one duty, and it's a major duty for the producer service provider. It's to ensure security and confidentiality. And when we speak about security, it's mainly technical, but it can be human also. But when we speak about confidentiality, it's mainly human. Then it's mainly what do we do with the data afterwards. I process the data for one purpose, and I informed the data subject about that purpose, and I would like to use the information for another purpose because it will be useful for my business. And that's all the concept of confidentiality, and it's tackled by the GDPR. We see that the GDPR tried to give guidelines to the use of data. Or we call that further data, further processing, or new processing with a new start from the beginning. Then we have, and I tackle mainly further processing. If we have further processing, we have to pay attention to the liceity of the processing. If we base the processing on contracts, it will be okay for non-sensitive data, but it won't be possible for the sensitive data. We have legal obligation. For example, employers send information for the social ministry. It's legal and it's mandatory. When we speak about vital interest, it's possible for both kind of data. And we have research, archivistic, and statistic. And there is a concept of previsibility link between both processing, etc., for the non-sensitive data. And when we have sensitive data, we are sent the Article 89 89 will give some guidelines saying that at the end, the state, national state, has to put the rules of reuse of this kind of data. In Belgium, we have the new Belgian Data Protection Act, which is very new because it was 19 July 2018. And I can tell you it will be fun for us to understand such a law because it has been written in a few months, and I think we have some luck in this legislation, but we'll have to use it for statistics. And also, you have also the article on profiling, and you have to be very careful on that, because if you will use or reuse the data for profiling activity, for example, we can think about insurance, we can think about services offered to the data subjects, you have to be very, very conscious about that the data subject can have a right to human intervention as the final solution, as the final decision, and we have to safeguard the data subject's rights. Then it's not so easy to use or to reuse the data for profiling purpose, as we give special rights to the data subjects. And sometimes the profiling is necessary for contract. For example, you receive the data subject's information to have a new contract with him. It will be possible to have a profiling when you use non-sensitive data, but it won't be possible when you use sensitive data. Then I want to show that companies must be very careful about the kind of data he will use and the purpose he has in mind by using the data. And then also, when we have further processing or we have new secondary processing, what about the rights of the access of opposition, portability, and so on? When we see what Facebook did with our data to other data controllers without any information, we didn't have any rights or access to the information. We didn't have a right of opposition. And we see that by using or reusing data, we have a big issue about the data subjects' rights, and we have to face. And companies must be very careful about the reuse of data and all the obligation raised by the GDPR. I think I am on time, and I will pass the floor to someone else. I thank you for the attention. I hope I was clear enough about the use of data.
Thank you, Marc. It was exactly 20 minutes to the point.